Imagine waking up to news of a brewing diplomatic storm between two nations that have long enjoyed a peaceful relationship. That's exactly what happened with India and Canada recently. Tensions arose between the two countries, historically marked by a friendly rapport after a tragic temple shooting in Canada. This act of violence triggered a ripple effect, reaching the apex of international diplomacy. Canada was left in shock, swiftly demanding justice. Meanwhile, the narrative evolved, hinting at rising conflicts. India, deeply connected to the temple spiritually, responded with grief and indignation. The incident's effects spread across the Indian Ocean, sparking a diplomatic crisis that threatened the relationship between both nations. As tensions escalated, the world watched, wondering what would happen next. A single event can spark a chain reaction. In this case, it was a tragic temple shooting. A moment of violence, a single act of aggression, became a catalyst for an international uproar. A serene temple, a place of peace and worship, was brutally disrupted by a horrific shooting. This wasn't just a local tragedy, it rippled across borders, reaching the ears and hearts of people around the world. The shock and horror of this event took root in Canada, sparking an intense wave of outrage. This wasn't just a reaction to a singular act of violence, but a response to a perceived infringement on sacred space, a violation of universal rights. The world watched as Canada's government, shaken by this incident, made a bold and controversial decision to impose sanctions on India. This act of aggression, this violation of peace, had escalated into a serious diplomatic confrontation. The temple shooting was no longer just a local tragedy but a global issue, a diplomatic standoff between two nations. The tragic event that shook the world had now become a flashpoint in a growing diplomatic crisis. As the shock of the shooting subsided, a new drama began to unfold. Canada, in an unprecedented move, decided to impose sanctions on India. This dramatic response was met with widespread condemnation, not only from India, but from the international community as well. The Indian government was quick to respond, expressing their strong disapproval of Canada's decision. They argued that the move was not only unjust, but also counterproductive, potentially causing more harm than good. The sanctions, they said, were an overreaction that failed to take into account the complexities of the situation. In the face of mounting criticism, Canada remained steadfast, defending their decision as a necessary response to what they perceived as a grave injustice. They argued that the sanctions were not meant to punish India, but to send a clear message that such acts of violence would not be tolerated. This tit-for-tat exchange marked a significant shift in bilateral relations. The once cordial relationship between the two nations was now marked by tension and mistrust. The diplomatic ties that had been carefully cultivated over the years were beginning to fray. The impact of these actions was not limited to the diplomatic sphere. It also had far-reaching implications for trade relations, with potential disruptions to the flow of goods and services between the two countries. The diplomatic war was in full swing and neither side showed signs of backing down. In the world of diplomacy, every action has a reaction, and this scenario was no different. Now we find ourselves peering into the fog of uncertainty, bracing for the potential implications of this diplomatic war. A clash of this magnitude could send shockwaves through the global economy. Both India and Canada, key players in the world market, might see their economies shaken and their trade relationships strained. The political consequences, too, are likely to be far-reaching. The balance of power, the alliances, the very fabric of international politics might see a shift, a realignment. This diplomatic war between India and Canada could redraw the geopolitical map, creating new alliances, and perhaps fostering old enmities. On the global stage, this standoff will undoubtedly be a talking point, a cause for concern. It could potentially affect international relations and policies, influencing the global narrative. Countries around the world will be forced to pick sides, to make decisions that could have long-lasting impacts. As the dust settles, the world watches and waits, anticipating the next move in this high-stakes diplomatic standoff. In a span of days, the harmony between India and Canada was disrupted, leading to a diplomatic war. A serene relationship, once marked by cooperation and mutual respect, was shattered by a single act of violence at a temple. This tragic event triggered a series of responses, culminating in the imposition of sanctions. As both nations grappled with the fallout, reactions varied from shock to defiance, setting the stage for a potentially long-lasting aftermath. As we continue to monitor this evolving situation, one thing is clear: the ripple effects of this diplomatic war will be felt for a long time to come. Thank you for watching our video on the diplomatic war between Canada and India. If you found this informative and want to stay updated on this situation and more, please subscribe to our channel. Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.